In this video, you'll hear the most fascinating stories from Joe McMoneagle, one of the CIA's top remote viewers, a man who worked on the secret Project Stargate. From deadly premonitions in Vietnam to psychic experiments that defied science, Joe reveals what the U.S. government really explored and what they found. These are the moments that changed how we see the human mind and the universe itself. In the chaos of war, Joe heard a voice that wasn't his own, a voice that stopped him seconds before an explosion would have ended his life.
To Vietnam. That was my second tour.
How did you receive the information that you were going to Vietnam? I mean, it was well into the war by this point. If you had joined at 18,
that was a story in itself. I got sent from the island back to Homestead, Florida. At the big air base there, we had an Army unit, and the Army unit was working with the Navy there. And so I became an instructor for the Navy, teaching them how to work a piece of equipment that they'd never seen before. And it irritated them that an Army guy could walk into their area, had total clearance to be behind their black, law. Well, I did the best job I could. And I noticed every time the block allocation came out for Southeast Asia, my name was on it, right at the top. It had a line through it with the colonel's initials. So after the third occasion, I went by to see the colonel, and I said, I'm here on a social visit. I said, I need to know why you keep lining me out and initialing it. He said, well, I've had long conversations with your ex-boss, and we've greased the scales for your going to officer candidate school. And I said, no, sir, that's not going to happen. And he said, who talked you out of it? And I said, me. I said, I'm not going. He said, why not? And I said, because I will go when I want to go, not when you want me to go. And I will earn it. I'm not going to have anybody grease anything for me. And I walked out. And the next block allocation came out. Red line and initials again. So I went back to see him, and I said, I thought we had this discussion. And he said, yeah. He said, but Southeast Asia is not in your future. And I said, it should be. I'm overdue. And I said, why are you doing this? And it turned out, and he's very open with me, his son died at age 18 from leukemia or something like that. And I looked almost identical to his dead son. And he had taken me on as somebody to protect. And I said, don't do this. I will not receive this well. Mm-hmm. The next block allocation, Southeast Asia. That's how I got to Vietnam.
So you wanted to go?
I wanted to go, yeah. That was part of being in the military for me. That was that's where it all is. It's a war. That's where they send people in the Army. Mm-hmm. That, and I felt I was well trained. I knew what I was doing. Why not? It didn't make any sense to me that somebody was keeping me out of it. Mm-hmm. It angered me in a sense.
Were there a lot of people at that time that actually wanted to go to the war? Because
no, hell no.
Nowadays we don't hear that.
No, there was huge demonstrations starting to build for resentment about it. Nobody wanted to be drafted. Nobody wanted to volunteer. It was a bad war. Nobody wanted to be in it. It was growing. This was, beginning of 67. And so, no, it was not a good thing. But I felt like it's denial. It's like stupid. You got it. If you're in the Army and you're a volunteer, that's what you do. You go where the war is. You go where the fight is. You go where you're needed. And so I went to Vietnam. And funny thing happened when I got to Vietnam and I walked in my first orderly room. That I had these orders in a packet that said not to be diverted by anybody, no matter what their rank, by order of some general somewhere. The first thing they tried to do was divert me. Divert me to a colonel who came in with a Jeep and a 5-ton and was looking for 25 warm bodies. And he had blood on him. And I said, I'm not going where he's going. Obviously, he's not very good at what he does. So I just walked away from him and went to the tent of the guy who was running the repo depot and just walked into his tent, laid in his cot, and took a nap. My orders said not to be diverted, so I took it seriously. Mm-hmm. So I finally got my orders to go up to the 330th Radar Recon in Pleiku area, Central Highlands. And so when I got up there and I walked in the orderly room, they said, oh, you're already in E6. And I said, well, yeah. He handed me another E6 stripe. And I said, what's this? He said, well, that's the blood stripe we were going to give you when you walked in. You know what a blood stripe is.
What is it?
That back then it meant the guy you were replacing was killed.
Oh, shit.
So you got his rank to take over. And I said, I don't know anything about what he was doing. They said, well, nevertheless, you're in charge of it. And so when I met the first guys I met, I said, I'm not in charge of you guys. You're in charge of me because I've not been here before. So until I'm comfortable, I'll do everybody else's job. But the guy who's been here the longest, you're in charge. So that's how I did it.
And so what was your mission?
My mission in Vietnam was manyfold. One was predominantly running outstations, what we call outstations for direction pointing. We had some 5 or 6 HF, high-frequency direction pointing stations. And they were out of the way. They might have 6, possibly upwards of 8 men assigned to them. But they were huge bunkers in the center of an antenna field that would do direction pointing. And getting from the outside of the antenna field to the inside of one of those bunkers usually required somebody coming out and meeting you and saying, step where I step. Because there was no other defense. They had swing rack twin 50s on top of the bunker, mm-hmm. and big searchlights and a lot of booby traps, and a lot of mines and stuff. And generally speaking, the enemy usually left it alone, but when they decided they wanted to take one out, it was Katie bar the door, that kind of thing. A lot of support fire, which is predominantly what the bunker was for, because it was always danger close stuff. But nevertheless, that's what I did, is I managed those things, those sites and things like that. And we had a thing called an ANPRD-1 at the time. I don't know if you are familiar with that.
I am not.
An ARPRD-1 was basically a radio with a rotational antenna on top that does direction finding in the HF area. It's at the time it was the most modern stuff they had at the end of the Second World War.
Okay.
So that piece of equipment weighed 68 pounds. It was considered man-packable.
Oh, man.
So you could dismantle it and man-pack it.
This was back in the hard days.
Problem was, it had batteries. The frickin' batteries weighed 60 pounds apiece. So it was like crazy. So the best we could do is we would hard mount it in a Jeep. And the Jeep that I went to the motor pool and selected a Jeep. And I told the motor pool sergeant, I said, "You got any V8s laying around?" I had a V8 put in my Jeep. I had the windshield taken off. I had a cutter bar put up in the front, welded in the front. 2 layers of sandbags laid in it. It was the fastest frickin' Jeep on the planet. And, this is something I never understood. You're in a combat area. You're in a heavily fortified combat area. So they dropped the speed limit to 25 miles an hour because of all the troops walking around. Bullshit. I'm not going down at 25 miles an hour. IEDs are set at 25 miles an hour. I'd blow through there at 70, and they'd be going off, half a mile behind me. Or if my driver happened to hit a piece of cardboard in the road, I usually beat him senseless with my helmet. It was like, no, 70 miles an hour is comfortable. And they have these things where they stop everybody to form up a convoy where they can mount heavy mortar teams in a truck in the front and a truck in the back and, all this protection for a convoy. And what do? The bottom of the mountain pass, going up the other side, they hit the lead truck, the tail truck, blast the bridge out of condition, and then rake it as long as they can before cover arrives. And cover's not very efficient in the mountains anyway. So, no, we'd come up for these convoys, and I'd pull out my special pass. I was an intelligence guy. And I'd say, "Move those barricades." We blow through there. I figure they're never going to open up on us with just a single Jeep.
Yeah.
They're waiting for that convoy. And so we'd be going down the road to the coast, out of the mountains, out of Ankh to the coast, and we'd go by areas where you could see them setting up their mortar emplacements and their heavy gun emplacements, their Russian heavy machine guns and stuff.
Wow.
We just blow through there.
It's a single Jeep.
Yeah, single Jeep. We might draw some ground fire, but they couldn't hit us.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff.
What kind of intelligence ops were you running?
Want to define the headquarters for most of these units, like the 144th, the 145th, North Vietnamese division, or whatever they call it. I can't remember now. Usually the larger units, the headquarters units, we're looking for their prime headquarters.
Okay.
And if we could locate that by locating the antenna first, their prime broadcast antenna, then once we located that, then we could go into the area and suss out where some of their main units were. And then once we had built the schematic of how they were laid out, we could call in,
Okay. So you guys were kind of triangulating on
on
enemy,
the antennas.
enemy HQs.
Right.
And then ordering a strike.
HQs. Sometimes we got smaller units that were operating in the area that were doing a lot of damage. Mm-hmm. They would bring us in on that. I remember one, and we took a lot of photographs too sometimes when we saw things that were obviously enemy active things.
So this is almost maybe, along the lines of what NSA is doing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, basically, but way up front.
Yeah.
And when I first got there, we lived in the base camp. We lived in a hole in the ground. It was actually a hole dug in the ground for a GP medium, and there were 6 guys in the hole living together. And so we just had the tent top spread out with a trench dug around it, and we had ammo crates for floor. So when it got wet and mucky in the bottom, we could walk around on the ammo crates and it was dry. And we had a couple tent poles in the center. And so we were sleeping right up against the dugout wall. and we could sandbag our sleeping cots. It was really warm, comfortable, dry. We get a rat in there every now and then, but we found us a dog. We called him Big Red. Buck Sergeant Red. And we turned him into an alcoholic. He got to liking beer so much. The worst beer in the world. Blue Ribbon.
Pabst Blue Ribbon.
Blue Ribbon. In the steel cans that rusted. But we give him a beer for any rat that he brought us dead. He turned into such an alcoholic.
Will work for beer.
Every morning, we'd throw the tent flap back, and he'd be like this. Pause. Sound asleep by the entry. 2 dead rats laying in front of him. So, 2 Pabst Blue Ribbon beers for breakfast. Then he was happy.
That's awesome.
And you'd see him around the unit, sitting with his ears like this, staring at a rat hole. Not moving, like stone statue dog. That rat stick his nose out, he'd have him. One more beer.
I read that you were in a helo crash in Vietnam.
Yeah, you could call it a crash. It was more or less like blown out of the sky. I hitched a ride coming back to Pleiku. I didn't want to take a vehicle ride for some reason. It was just quicker. I want to get back to Pleiku City, so I hitched a ride on a helicopter, and I had my rucksack. I had all my equipment with me. And so I was riding in this helicopter. And in Vietnam, the heat was so bad that helicopters back then with the smaller engines just couldn't lift off. They had to take an aircraft takeoff. They had to move in ground effect like an airplane. Once they got above a certain height, it's like only 400 or 500 feet, they could operate like a helicopter because the air got heavier. And so landing was the same problem. So we were coming into Pleiku to land. So we were cruising along the outside edge of the runway to where the helicopter parking pad was. And they waved us off because they had a big cargo plane coming in. So we moved over to the trees and went to about 100 feet over the trees. Not above the trees. It's like around 100, 120 feet total. But we were over the tops of the trees. And the air was cooler. So I was sitting on the side of the helicopter with my feet on the sked. And I'm pretty sure we got hit with an RPG right in the belly because there was this white fireball. That's all I remembered. And I woke up on the ground. And I had fallen through trees, I guess ricocheting off of limbs or something. But when I landed in this flat sitting position. So I was sitting on the ground like this with my rucksack still on. But my rifle was laying way out here somewhere. I think I was still carrying the rifle then, but. So I went to reach for it and passed out from the pain. Because the impact had jammed my spine. Had multi-fractured my spine to some degree. And I was in a lot of pain. So I was eventually able, it was right at dusk when this happened. So I was able to roll over because I was hearing things in the bushes I didn't like. And all I had was I had a knife, and I found a really good fist-sized rock. So I crawled up into some bushes and just laid there, in the fetal position, hoping if somebody found me, I wouldn't have to get into it. And I was out there all night like that. And then the next day, they came in to recover the wreckage, I guess, for parts or something. And they found a number of us still alive.
So you weren't the only
I
survivor.
wasn't the only survivor. Just about everybody survived. There might have been one dead or somebody that died later. I don't know. I just know when I got to the MASH unit, I was one of the fewer damaged people. I just had a spine compression. That's what they call it. So they put me in traction. They actually put metal pins in my skull and hooked wire, sandbags, and so I was like taut over this cot for, oh God, they had me there for like 2 weeks in traction. And I started feeling pretty good. And then they had a bunch of people come in wounded, and they said, sorry, we're going to take you out of traction. We think you're going to be okay. They took me out of traction. I stood up and almost passed out because of the recompression of standing up. And they gave me a couple shots, and they handed me a big bottle of Percocets. I remember it was like this big around, about this tall. And they said, you're going to be all right. Take these. Go back to your unit and walk it off.
Trick or treat.
Trick or treat. So I went back to the unit, and that's what I did. I walked it off. It was a lot of pain, but it started easing the more Percocets I took.
Yeah.
The better it got, and we even had some speed that we would take sometimes, which caused some problems because then you couldn't get something to go to sleep with. So we all started drinking Jack Daniels and throwing the cap away, that kind of thing.
Chasing the dragon.
Which I really paid for when I got out of the Army. That's a much later story. But I just learned to deal with it.
A lot of guys in Vietnam saw some weird things in the jungle.
You didn't have to be in the jungle to see weird things.
Really?
My first week there, I saw probably one of the worst things I've ever seen in my life. I was in a 3/4 ton sitting up front. We pulled up to an intersection of a main road. And the 3/4 was right behind a, what do they call it, a Lalo truck or I can't remember what they call them now.
Some type of an indigenous vehicle?
Yeah, it was like a motorcycle with seats in the back for up to 6 people.
Like a tuk-tuk or something?
Tuk-tuk, yeah.
Okay.
That's what they call them, tuk-tuk. And it was a woman and a small boy in the back, and the driver revving his engine. And it was a convoy of trucks going through. And the convoy were all low boys with tanks on them and APCs and, heavy equipment. And they're blowing through this intersection, one behind the other. And sometimes there was a break. But the convoy kept going. And this guy got a break. I guess he thought he could make it. And he gunned the engine and he popped the clutch and he got out in the middle and it stalled. Bang. The next convoy truck hit him hard, spun him around, and the back wheels of the trailer went over him. And then every truck behind that, bang, bang. Every single one of them hit that tuk-tuk and started pounding it down in size. To the point you could not see the difference between the metal and the bodies. It was just like a big spongy mess in the middle of the road. No stops. Nobody, the convoy just kept blowing through there. And I've always thought, so they just didn't show up at home. Nobody could have known who they were.
Yeah.
But nobody stopped. Nobody gave a shit. They just...
Like it was nothing.
A bang. That was nothing. And I can't get that out of my head. That was my introduction to Southeast Asia. That and little kids. Innocent kids. Since then, it's kind of interesting. I probably wouldn't do a thing for an adult in trouble. Yeah, okay. But kids and dogs or cats, innocent animals, innocent children are what hurts. That's what drives me crazy. So if I see a child being mistreated or something, it takes a lot of willpower to walk away without pounding somebody into the pavement.
Yeah.
I can't deal with that. But grown adults, I don't give a shit. Hey, you asked for it, you earned it.
Yeah.
You're that stupid. Well,
Yeah.
that's life. I've always felt that way ever since my military career. And it's probably unfair. It's probably bad thinking. I don't know. It's just
Well,
the way
I mean,
am.
don't you think that maybe kind of mindset develops as you experience war and see the lengths that humans will go to
Yeah.
get what they want, prove a point, egos get involved in
Oh yeah.
but even just the war,
Yeah.
by traveling around the world, and I mean, you'd had some, I don't know what you were doing in the Bahamas, but the Bahamas, Vietnam, I mean, you
I've been all over the
start
world.
to see humanity
Yeah.
for what it is.
Yeah, I think so. But I got to tell you that the average human being walking on the street has no control over what the governments do. It's the politicians that start wars.
Yeah.
During a classified experiment, his consciousness separated from his body. What he saw convinced scientists that reality is far stranger than we think.
You can go out of body, and the first thing that catches your attention is a chandelier in the next room. But the chandelier, when you pass into it, is the most glorious thing you've ever seen in your whole life, because you're collecting everything about it into your sense of it. And so it's like you just want to grovel in it. Everything is better than what you are. I mean, you just want to capture all of it. Things of beauty are 10 times more beautiful, and things that you would normally not pay any attention to are the most gorgeous things on the planet. It's hard to not be distracted in the out-of-body condition. So I did that, and then Monday morning at 4 a.m. I get up and drive back to Fort Meade.
Can you feel energy flow?
You can feel everything in the out-of-body condition. For instance, once you get control of it, then Bob would start giving me things to do. He'd say, go to the location in the envelope. And I'd go to whatever that location was. And I'd be in the out-of-body state. And I'd report to him what I was finding. On this one occasion, he sent me to the Basilica in Rome. It was in the envelope. The altar in the center of the Basilica of Rome. So I landed there in the out-of-body condition, and there was a beam of white light that came through the center of the dome and just splattered on the floor. It filled the whole room with light. And I told him, this is a place of light. It's a column of just what looks like liquid energy light coming through the center of a dome. And he said, put your hand in it. Put my hand in it. I went, oh, wow. And he said, what are you feeling? And I said, perfection. What do you mean? I don't know. Don't want to move. Just want to be here. It felt like unconditional love, perfection. And then I said, housed in a box of broken glass, or something like that. It's okay, fine. Pull your hand out. Why? Yeah, because I said so. I'll come in there and jerk you out of that bed. No, he didn't say that. But he'd say it's time to leave or something, and I would do that. But we did that for quite a while, and then people showed up while I was in the box, and I was taking a nap because we had been working for quite a while. And this is months later. And they showed up to test me. And so I got 2 targets, which I was tested on. And I did the 2 targets, wrote it all out afterwards, and gave it to the representatives from the DOD. And after which they said, don't do this anymore.
What is your reaction to that?
My reaction to that is, oh, you don't like the result, so now I'm not supposed to do it anymore. If it had been the result you wanted, then I would be doing it some more. That's how I felt in my head and everything. The one target, the second target that I did.
Let me, if you don't mind, can I rewind?
Sure.
So you were poisoned in an assassination attempt. You had an out-of-body experience.
Yeah.
Then they wanted to study you in the wing of some psych ward or hospital or something under medical supervision.
I don't think it was study. I think they were trying to determine whether I had irreversible brain damage or whether or not I was still sane and straight.
From there, you went to be trained by Bob Monroe on out-of-body experiences.
No. From there, I finished a complete another tour.
Okay.
In Germany, northern Thailand, did some things in other countries, and then came back to the States, made warrant, was in charge of my MOS, and then recruited by the psychic program, developed my psychic abilities to the point that some have said it's the best in the world. And that's when they decided, well, maybe it would be even better if you could go out of body to a target.
Okay.
And collect it.
When the CIA gave him random coordinates, Joe described vast pyramids and ancient structures, not on Earth, but on Mars.
On a ward. And I'm hiding under my cot. Don't tell anybody I'm here. Oh, I'm in the hole, down under my cot. Don't tell anybody I'm here. I could have gone to Leavenworth. I didn't even think about it. I did some stupid stuff. There's a certain freedom in that, when you don't have to be responsible one way or the other.
I'd like to talk about some of your other remote viewings. Now, one in particular I'd like to discuss is you were tasked with remote viewing Mars, from what I understand. And the time period, I believe, was 1 million BC?
Yeah, 1 million BC.
Who was that directed by?
Well, when it was tasked, I was sleeping in the industrial cube, the sealed cube, in Bob Monroe's lab at the Monroe Institute, because we had been working on going out of body and controlling it. And I was exhausted. So we've been working. This was Sunday, I think. And he woke me up, and I said, yeah, I'm awake. What's going on? He said, well, I have some people here from Department of the Army, and they have a target for you. And I said, okay, what do you want me to do? He said, well, why don't he said, I have an envelope here. There's nothing written on it. It's in my pocket. Tell me something about it. So it started out with a really large pyramid. And I said, first thing, words out of my mouth was, this must be a new discovery. And he said, why do you say that? And I said, because it's huge. It's bigger than the Pyramid of Giza. Must be a new discovery somewhere. And then he said, well, tell me something about it. That's what I want to know. And so I said, it's got really large rooms inside. It's kind of surprising because the way pyramids are built, that can't be done. You can't have large rooms inside because of the weight of the construction. So it must be some new form of construction. So are you sure this is not a new discovery? And he said, just tell me what I need to know. So I said, well, it appears to be some form of protection of survivors of some cataclysm. And they're in stasis. They're waiting for somebody to come. I said, but I think it's too late. I think they're all dead. And he said, why do you say that? And I said, because I feel like the messages I'm getting are like leftover mental images, things that they pass differently from normal or something like that. So he asked me some other questions. He moved me around in the target and asked me some other questions and things. And it turned out there were 6 specific targets that I was given in that particular case. And all 6 of them I described exactly what was standing there. And when I say that, I mean what was also pictured in negatives by JPL, Jet Propulsion Laboratory, California. And so I finally said, it's like a special race of people or something. I'm getting humans just like we are, but I'm not so sure they're humans like we understand human, because they're way bigger. So what do you mean? I said they're like 10 feet tall, really huge, but they're proportionately the same and very human-like. So I don't know what's going on here. I said, and the sun looks really weird. And he said, I don't care about the sun. Tell me more what's on the ground. So he was being a pretty good monitor at the time. And so we basically finished the whole line of it. And I came out. I said, what's going on? And I was introduced to these people. And the guy that had brought them was Fred Atwater, my old training officer. So this was, as far as I was concerned, was an active mission because we were still doing remote viewing with the project. And so I said, so where is this? Is this a new discovery or something? And he says, well, Bob's got the envelope. It has a target identified in it. And Bob said, oh, yeah, I got it right here. And he pulled it out of his shirt pocket and just opened it up as an envelope. nothing written on it. And so we opened up the envelope, and inside it said Mars, 1 million years BC. And I said, wow. I mean, what are you going to say? But everything that's actually on the ground, I described. There is what I decided to do was the next time I was in California, I was going to go by JPL and get copies of the negatives, because somebody said, oh, it's all BS. And I said, no, I think they're pictures, specific pictures for the different GPS locations. See, these were all GPSs that they read to me while I was in the box. The GPSs, in my mind, were for Earth. I never heard of GPSs for another planet. It turns out every planet in our universe has got GPSs that match the Earth's, because they're all spherical, as well as the moons and everything else. So I didn't understand it to be off the Earth. I thought GPSs only worked on the Earth. So that's why I kept thinking it was a new discovery. But it turned out I went to JPL, and I walked up to the counter, and I had the actual card that had the GPSs written on it. 6 or 7 GPSs. I think there were 7, and I just didn't do the 7th because I was too tired. I worked on it for maybe an hour and a half, and I was tired anyway from working all day. So I walked up to the desk, and the guy said, can I help you? And I said, yeah, I understand all the pictures taken in space belong to the American people. And he said, of course they do. It's taxes paid for them. I said, okay, I'd like to see all the pictures for these GPSs. And he took one look at the card and said, oh, that's the old city on Mars. And opened the drawer and pulled out a packet and handed it to me. And inside the packet are all the negatives. And I blew up the negatives, and guess what's in my book? Everything I described. An old fort, pyramids, big impact crater with a road running through it. There's a road runs straight as an arrow for 1,200 kilometers on Mars that go right through the heart of a huge impact crater. And where the road come through, you can see where the impact crater has been modified to let the road through one side and out the other. Now, here's the thing that made it real for me. The outer edges of the impact crater, they know how tall the edges are of the impact crater because there's a 1/2 inch of shadow line around them. And they know the angle that the picture was taken and from where, and the sun's position and all that. So they can tell you that the 1/2 inch of shadow line around the outside edge of the impact crater tells you that it's 3,000 feet high, the walls of the impact crater. That's not really a super high wall on an impact crater, but what they don't tell you, and it's shown in the picture, is in the upper rim edge of the impact crater is a little triangular piece sticks out on the side of the impact crater. That had to have been put there by somebody. It's a construct. It sticks straight out at a perfect 90-degree angle. It goes like that.
Is it part of the pyramid?
No. It's part of the wall of the impact crater. So you got an edge up here, 3,000 feet up, and there's a triangular piece that sticks out and goes back in. And on top of that is a pyramid. It looks like a pyramid because you're looking straight down on top of it. the shadow from that pyramid that you're going straight down on top of is 2.5 inches out. Now, if the impact crater has a 1/2 inch shadow and it's 3,000 feet tall, how tall do you think that 2.5 inch shadow is? It's up there. I said to the guy at JPL when he showed them to me, I looked at it. I said, how tall do you figure this is? And he said, really tall. And I said, well, okay, how did it get there? It had to be put there after the impact crater hit. After that thing that made the impact crater had hit Mars. It couldn't have been put there before, because the impact would have
destroyed
blown it away. This thing is literally tens of thousands of feet tall. What the hell is it? And he said, well, a lot of people think it's a shard. It kind of grew there. And I went, I started laughing.
It grew.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure this thing grew there. But who built the support for it on the edge of the impact crater? Well, nobody knows about that. It's anybody's guess. So there's no doubt in my mind that what they're saying about this old city is true, because that's true. I mean, why? It's like I ask questions about it, and they just look at you like you're stupid and say, well, we don't know. Why did you take pictures of that area of Mars? We don't know. How do you think that got? Well, we don't know.
I mean, what is your thought process after that?
I happen to think the only aliens on our planet is us. And I have good reason to say that. I think we're the aliens on this planet because we don't give one rat's butt about this planet. We take and take and take whatever we want from it. We don't give a damn what happens to the climate, the planet, or anything else. We have shit so badly in our nest that you see people dying left and right of more and more cancers, and we got to go, I wonder why that's happening. It's stupidity. It's God almighty. But everybody wants to think we're the master race. We are human beings. We own the world. The Bible says, take control. Sounds apolitical to me. Maybe just a hint.
I mean, is that disturbing to you at all?
Very much so, yeah. Very much so. That everything on this planet, but human, cares about this planet. If a group of wolves, let's say wolves out of Alaska, if they run out of food and they can't hunt food anymore where they live, they kill off their young, they kill off their dead, they move to a place where they can find game that they can eat. Only the strong survives, but they do it to save their family unit. And they only kill and eat what they need to kill and eat. They don't do it out of savagery, and they don't do it because they're bad. They do it because they're in tune with the very world that they live in. They understand it. They operate within it. They do what's necessary to survive only. There isn't another animal on this planet that doesn't do the same thing, except for human beings. We just take what we want, and it doesn't matter what it does to the planet. And we just keep doing it over and over and over. And it's about power, money, influence in the governments of the planet, and it's a predominant reason for war. You know, it's what keeps the coffers filling up. It's part of how we can produce something that gives us lots of money back that we can enjoy. And all it costs is a little war here, a little war there. And you can't not buy more airplanes or tanks because it takes 12 states now to make a tank. That's 125,000 jobs that would disappear overnight if we didn't buy any new tanks. So you have Model 2, Model 3, brand new kind, bigger gun, faster tracks, whatever. We just keep reinventing reasons for that stuff. Why can't we decide to put everything back to normal and stop all the foolishness and pay people to do that? That seems to me to be a more realistic way to live on a finite planet where we're not going to kill ourselves or ruin it or in some way destroy the very thing that supports us. I think we came here because of something that happened on Mars. Were we the cause of it? Who knows?
Do you ever look more into previous viewings out of curiosity? Like perhaps
no, I can't. I can't do that. I can't target myself because then I know what I'm working on.
Joe's final revelation is unsettling. Maybe we aren't being visited by aliens. Maybe we are the aliens who took over their planet.
Hair-like stuff came out of the walls. And it tingled when you held it in your hands. And if you took it out at night, it would glow in the dark. And it did so. It glowed in the dark for like 25 years. Because some of these kids that stole parts of this stuff were putting it on their Christmas trees for 25 years because it glowed in the dark. So that's not human manufacture. That's manufactured by somebody else. So it stands to reason that if Tic Tacs are being manufactured somewhere, it's probably on this planet because they're not able to travel into the vacuum of space. They're only able to travel high speeds on this planet. It may be that the people who manufacture the Tic Tacs live in certain areas on our planet that are unknown to us, because that's what they've done for thousands of years. It's our arrival that changed everything. So, what if these are the actual inhabitants of Earth from the very beginning? And we're not. We're the aliens. And we've come in and taken over the world. And now all they have to deal with us over is how to convince us that they are something that we're afraid of. Not in reality are they capable of doing anything to anybody. They're harmless. But they were able to avoid us for a long time with their Tic Tacs because of the speed, their ability to change direction in a 90-degree turn at high speeds, and their ability to go from air to water without making a splash, all that stuff. And so we're now predisposed to think that maybe these aliens, or whatever they are, have bases on our planet somewhere. Well, they may. These may be the very bases that we're talking about. I think if they do, then they're native to this planet. We're ultimately the invader. We're the ones who came in and just started taking things and taking it. And, oh yeah, and taking it. And, never stopped. It's a hard call to make, and so some of my suggestions, I'm pretty sure, have been slow down, use my remote viewing carefully, because you need to interpret it only as far as what it says, not implies. And I think a lot of people take my remote viewing and use it as it's implied, not as its actual limit, or what it says. And that's an aggravation for me, because it's an irritant, actually. It kind of makes me angry when they leap to a conclusion and come to the conclusion that's, I said A, so A plus 1 must be true. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know if I'm being clear.
No, I know, I do understand what you're saying. You're basically saying that people are making assumptions based off the information that you're providing to them.
Right.
Have you ever made your own assumptions off of your own information, or have you always had the discipline to just see it for what it is?
I try not to do that. It's hard not to, but I still try really hard not to. Because like I said, I'm the only viewer that came out of the remote viewing program and went straight into a lab. I went right into SRI International. And I worked there from around 1985 until it closed in 88. When they let me go in 88, I was hired immediately by Science Applications International Corporation. So I went right into that lab. I'm the only viewer that has voluntarily gone into all the labs and been challenged on my viewing, and I've done my viewing under maximum controls. No, one other person did that. The only other person that's ever done that, gone into the labs after they came out of the project, was a young lady named Angela Ford. And Angela Ford, while she was with the unit, was treated extremely badly. Now, I have to back this up by saying Angela Ford was I think she was a GS-14 maybe. She was a GS employee of the government. She was an intelligence analyst in one of the highest positions you can have in the Pentagon as an analyst. And she became a remote viewer. She does her remote viewing with automatic writing. Because of that, because of the fact she was different and a woman in the project under Defense Intelligence Agency, she was called a witch and shoved into a side room, and hardly anything ever done with her stuff. She got out of the project when it shut down in 1995, and came straight into the lab. And she's done unbelievable stuff in the lab because she's being honored, she's being respected, she's being given the same things I'm being given, and she does extremely well in that. So I have to say that, like, a lot of her stuff has been misused, misidentified, unused, ignored, all these things because she wasn't saying things to support what they were looking for.
Do you have contact with her?
Yes,
Do you think she would be interested in doing an interview?
Sure. I believe she would.
I would love to interview her.
Okay. I'll put you together with her.
Thank you.
When I get back, I will send her an email, talk to her on the phone, and then give you her address and everything when she gives me permission to do that.
Thank you.
She's really good. I bring her in on my remote viewing training that I do at the Monroe Institute. I bring her in for one night to answer questions. And she has fun with those, let me tell you. I'll tell you something she did. The first week in the lab, they had a U.S. Customs agent who took $2 million that was supposedly earmarked for something. He just stole it and disappeared. So the FBI was really after this guy. And he was on a most wanted list and all that sort of thing. But it was dead of winter when this happened. And so they were absolutely positive, since he loved the Bahamas, he's in the islands. He went down there, he probably bought a boat. He's living in the islands. She comes up with the fact he's in, I don't know, West Muldoon, Iowa or something. I can't remember now. It was Wyoming or something like that. So she says, no. He's way out in Wyoming or something. Nobody believes her. Every psychic in the unit is talking about the Bahamas, Bimini, Nassau, all these places. Because they're picking up on all this stuff. And she's saying, no, he's up north. Where all the parks are closed because the snow falls 6 feet deep. No. He hates the cold. He'd never go there. Not with $2 million in his pocket. So, huge argument entailed. And so, Defense Intelligence Agency is nervous about all the psychics saying Bahamas, and she's saying East Spunk, Iowa or something. Wyoming. So she gets more specific. They go back to her and say, why do you say that? Well, he's staying in a place that's right behind a Native American burial ground. It's right next to a national park. There's like 6 feet of snow on the ground, and he's the only guy in this motel. Nobody believes it. But just in case, the FBI sends a wanted poster out to all the park places in the extreme Northwest that's buried under snow. Park ranger remembers having breakfast with him, the only two people in the entire freaking world eating breakfast together in this drive-up diner in Wyoming or wherever it was. So he gets the facts on his machine. As soon as he gets to work, he turns around, he goes back with a state trooper, and they arrest the guy.
No way.
Yeah. In Podunk, Iowa, or Wyoming, or wherever the hell it was. And they arrest him in this motel, behind which is an Indian burial ground. And it's adjacent to a park. I think she was even more specific about what kind of park. And it's like she gets no credit at all for it until they're talking about it. The great job the FBI did on the news one night. And somebody calls in from the Park Service. So, that's not how it happened. That's not how it happened. They sent us a wanted poster on him. Our guy from the Park Service actually had breakfast with him and got a state trooper, and they arrested him and turned him over to the FBI. The FBI had no idea he was here. And the only reason the Park Service sent out the all points wanted bulletin was because she said so.
Wow.
That all came home to roost. And so she walked around like the queen bee for about a week.
Good for her.
Yeah, good for her. But if you talk to her, you got to talk to her about the missing guy with the bunny.
I will.
She just kept stating over and over. And she gets all this by automatic writing.
Wow.
Absolutely brilliant young lady.
I would love to have a conversation with her as well.
Yeah, you'd enjoy it. She had an identical twin sister, and they were both as good as, one was as good as the other. Her sister's
Interesting.
now dead.
And you had a twin.
No, she did too. Identical twin. I didn't have an identical twin. I had a female twin. And but her sister was as psychic as she was, but her sister's dead now, and she's retired now. But and they treated her like crap. And I mean, she was one of the top analysts
Man.
in the Pentagon, and she wanted to come into that unit. She volunteered to come into that unit because she knew she had something to offer, and she did, and she still does, and we still use her in the labs. She's that good. I mean, she's really a good person.
Well, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Well, Joe, we're wrapping up the interview, and I have one more viewing, and I want to say that I'm very reluctant to ask this question.
Okay. Go ahead and ask it anyway. I couldn't leave here without answering it.
Today's your 78th birthday.
Yep. In all its majesty.
It is my understanding that you may have remote viewed your own death, and that it happens at age 78.
I don't know about that. 78. I did have an incident when I went to Vietnam where I thought I saw my imminent death, and it turned out to be a huge assumption on my part. It happened exactly as I saw it, but it was an assumption.
Okay.
So what I think might be misconstrued here is I had a problem with an infection from one of my hospital surgeries. And I went up to New York. This was when I was 72. I went up to New York because I got my degree. I graduated with this big crowd of young kids. But it was right after I had a back surgery. And in my spinal surgery, they had a lot of staples down my back. And one was inverted. It was backwards. And they couldn't get it out. And I think somebody was back there messing with it, trying to get it out. And I said, I hope you're wearing gloves so you scrub your hands real good. And she got them, walked out, and I never saw her again. She told me something. But anyway, the doctor came out with a pair of gloves on and just took a pair of pliers and jerked it out. So we went ahead up to New York, and I graduated. The next morning when I woke up, I had a really bad infection showing on the sheet in the hotel. So my lovely wife drove me straight back to the University of Virginia Hospital. And I went in the emergency room. And they couldn't find an open OR. I was in the emergency room a long time, many hours. And I was getting weaker and weaker. My body was just racked with this infection. Turned out it was a Staphylococcus aureus or something like that. Anyway, it was a terrible infection. And I was running out of energy, so they wanted me to do an MRI. And, just before the MRI, I was getting weaker and weaker. And I said, in my mind, I felt like I was standing on a pad of tiles and they were falling away one at a time. And I viewed that as my energy going out. And I got to a point where only my feet were standing on tiles. And I came to the conclusion that it would just be so easy to step across and not be there anymore. And so I was contemplating this because I was done. I felt this hand grab my arm. It was my wife, and she whispered at me. She said, "Don't you dare leave me." And I went. So I started stealing energy from as many places and people as I could. So they put me in an MRI, and halfway through the MRI, I started hallucinating. So I said, "Got to get me out of here." And the doctor chided me. He said, "I thought you were a tough old Army guy, that you could deal with an MRI." And I said, "I can normally, but I'm hallucinating. So I know my temperature is about as high as it's going to go." And he said, "Nevertheless, you should have finished your MRI." So when I came out of the MRI, the nurse came over and rubbed one of those temperature things on my head. And she turned to the doc. She said, "He's not wrong. It's 107. They found an OR room immediately and reopened everything that they had done on my spine and washed it all out with antibiotics and pumped antibiotics into me for months and finally killed all that stuff. That's probably the closest I've come. Vietnam, when I got off the plane, when I arrived in Vietnam, and I stepped off the C-130, I come off that back ramp. When my foot hit the ground, I saw myself dying in a flash of white light. I knew that's it. That's where I'm going to go. An itinerant rocket attack or a mortar, big heavy mortar, or maybe a artillery round or something was going to get me. And I turned around and I told the guy behind me, and they just opened up a space behind me. Nobody wanted to be close to me after I told them that. So I go through the whole time in Vietnam and nothing happened. Well, I had a few close ones, but, rattled me a little bit, but I didn't die of a itinerant round. So I get ready to leave Vietnam, and I had also had a vision that I'd be leaving on a bright yellow plane called the Canary plane or something. I said, "That's not possible." So I get to the airport, and I'm leaving Vietnam, and it says, "You're flying on one of those new Braniff planes. They're pastel colors, and yours is a canary yellow. It's called Big Bird or something." So I flew out on a canary yellow plane. So that came true too. But the explosion didn't. I couldn't figure that out till I had my near-death experience in Austria when I was enveloped in a white light. I went, "Here it is. I'm in it." I was like, yeah, I saw that coming in Vietnam. I misinterpreted it. Okay. The only thing I might have said that would have brought that out of someone would be at some of my talks when people say, "Well, how long do you plan on doing this?" or "How long do you plan on being here?" or whatever, that sort of thing. Sometimes my comment is, who knows? I could go going home. I could get nailed by somebody going home. Or I could just drop dead right in front of you. And they all get a laugh out of that, but they're not sure if I'm telling the truth or not. And it doesn't matter. None of that matters. The fact of the matter is I've come so close to death so many times that I've reached a point where my understanding is I'm still here simply because I'm not through doing whatever I'm doing. So that may be interpreted as when I'm saying I'm quitting the remote viewing work, as, well, now he's done. But that's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying I'm not doing remote viewing anymore. I'll teach remote viewing at the Monroe Institute as long as they'll have me. Or I give talks there anytime they want them. Or I do webinars for them. Anything that supports that place I'll do until they're throwing dirt on my face in the ground, because that's how I feel about it. And a lot of that may be misinterpreted by some who think, oh my God, he's going to die on us. No, usually what I tell them is if I drop dead in the next 2 minutes, it's not important.
Mm-hmm.
What's important is that happens while I'm doing something I like to do. Then it's okay. If I was doing something I hated with a passion and it happened, oh God, what a waste that would have been. That kind of thing. I don't worry about that stuff anymore. When you're 78 and don't give a shit, it's okay. I just want to enjoy what I do.
Yeah.
Be relaxed.
After facing death more than once, Joe no longer fears it. He believes the afterlife isn't a place. It's every soul you ever touched. Reflected back at you.
Somebody had told me that, and we have rescheduled. And when I found out that the rescheduled date was on your 78th birthday,
You thought.
I was like, whoa.
Well, yeah.
Whoa.
What if he just goes to sleep in the chair?
Is this a self-fulfilling prophecy? But
Well, that would be something cool to catch, wouldn't it?
I would rather that not happen, Joe. But do you fear death at all?
No, I have absolutely no fear of death. I never have, actually, since my near-death experience.
What do you think happens?
What I think happens, it's like I have no absolute belief in heaven or hell. I think we just progress into a new form of what we are. And I think the real surprise, what heaven and hell is, I've given a lot of thought to this. If when you're dead, you find out that all the people you lived and interacted with are all part of you. The reason that would be a good thing is because if we as entities learn by experience, there's no way knowing if the experience is valid or not if all we're getting is our perception of it. The only way you can know if experience was valid and had something beneficial generated by it would be if we were not only the person in the experience, but all persons in the experience. In other words, we would have to have every perspective of all the people we care about that we're part of in that experience. So in death, I would welcome the fact of knowing that all the people I was heavily engaged with my entire life were all just extensions of me. That's the only way of getting every perspective of every action you've ever taken, would be to have the perceptions of all those you care most for, or you care about, or you're part of, or your family with, or you worked with, or all of that. And I think that's true. I think that's what we find out. That's the big surprise at death. Everything we experienced has been perceived, and we get all of those perceived experiences from everybody that we've ever been part of. So in a holistic sense, we're not just us. We're all the people we've lived with and cared about. So I cannot imagine a worse hell than to treat people like shit your whole life and to find out all the damage you did. and not be able to rectify that, to feel their pain. Everything, all the pain and all the bad experience and all the frustration and upset that you've given, the sickness that you've delivered to them, and not be able to fix it and know that it was just the major part of you. I think that's hell on whatever. And not so much the other. I think heaven is knowing that you did everything you possibly could to soften the impact of life on the people you care about. The people that are important to you in your entire lifetime. So people have a way of making up for their failures by realizing that and understanding that it's not just them. It's everybody they're in contact with. When they do something to themselves, to denigrate themselves, they're doing it to all the people who care about them. That they're all part of the same, you're all part of the same person, the same entity.
One ecosystem.
Yeah. It's a learning system. And I think it's the only way to really learn is to know all the perceptions that people who cared about you had when you did A or B or C. The only way to learn from it is to know what was wrong about it, what was right about it, how it affected people that were observing it. I think that's true learning. And that may be a design. I don't think it's a flaw. I think it's a design in the reality of which we are all part of something larger. And you can call it God or whatever you want, but it's something much larger. And it deals with all possibilities. I mean, there's lots of people that exist. I say people, there's lots of entities that exist across the cosmos. What if all that's true? We think very little of ourselves if we act the way we are versus being better at it or greater at it or, I don't know. Pay attention.
That's some deep thought.
Yeah.
And that's the first time I've ever heard that. And that makes a hell of a lot of sense.
Well, it makes sense to me.
Thank you.
Anyway, you're welcome.
I mean, just that that segment alone is motivation for people to do the right thing.
One would hope so. There are still those that think that's better, more power is better, and why do I want to get involved in that foolishness? Well, they'll find out. I think that's hell to pay. That's what it is later.
Wow. Well, Joe, I just want to say thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Thank you for coming on and sharing everything that you've shared. And is the Monroe Institute,
Oh, it's a great
is that
place.
open enrollment? Can anybody sign up?
Oh, anybody can sign up. You can come anytime you want. Take a gateway.
I hope you're ready. There's going to be a lot of
Take a
people
gateway.
coming.
And I won't even acknowledge your presence when I see you. I'll just go, who the hell are you? Don't I know you from somewhere? You'll have a great time. I guarantee it.
I would love to come.
And you'll learn a lot about yourself
I would love that too.
and other people that you never thought you would get along with.
Well, I hope to see you there.
Okay.
Thank you.
You will. I'll be around.
Perfect. But I will link the Monroe Institute in the description. And
Great.
once again, Joe, I don't say this lightly. It's an honor to have you here and to get to know you and to hear about your experiences as you've experienced life, and just thank you.
You're
It
welcome.
was and your lovely wife too. It was amazing to meet her.
Don't leave her out. I wouldn't be in this if I'd be long gone, I think, actually. Be hard to deal with life without her.
Yep. Yep.
I think I'd volunteer for that one-way mission. I once asked her if I could write a letter to NASA and volunteer for the Mars mission. No, listen, I have enough artificial body now that I'd probably survive on Mars. She'd kill me for saying that, but
Well, thank you.
yeah, you're welcome.
All right.
Take care.
Joe McMoneagle's story is more than a military secret. It's a journey into the unknown corners of the human mind. From the battlefields of Vietnam to the surface of Mars, his experiences challenge everything we think we know about life, death, and what lies beyond. Sometimes the most extraordinary missions happen inside the mind.